Hi, Susie.
Hey there, Becky.
How are you?
Uh, Fine.
How you doing, Bob?
Pretty good. You warm enough?
I'm actually very comfortable.
Mm.
It's gotten a little bit air moving now, so that's good. Being on the hill has its advantages.
Yes.
Hi, April.
Hi, I
If-
got to spend time sailing and kayaking and swimming. That's how I cope.
Heck yeah.
Too much sun though. Oof.
Mm.
Yeah, me too. I was weed whacking, which is not as much fun as sailing, but
Oh no, weed whacking's up there.
yeah.
Very satisfying.
Mm.
No, we'll miss these hot days.
Damn right. You try as a carpenter for a long time, you learn to be aware of where the shade is on a day like today.
Yeah,
Plan your movements around the woods or the house so you can be in the shade for the most of the day, and that helps.
Mm.
you must have had some brutal time.
Oh, babe, on a roof, on a day like today, on the south
Oh.
side, baked.
Mm. Well, I drove to the lake today and watching the people working on the power lines. It's like, they're all and all their equipment and that heat and the height. It's
Yeah, those guys are paving the parking lot at Stop and Shop. Imagine that.
oh yeah, yes. That looks like fun too.
I think
Hi,
There you
Jim.
go.
Hey guys,
Hey,
Hey,
AJ.
AJ.
all right, I got no George tonight, got a message from him.
Right.
And I didn't hear anything from Jim Walton. Does anybody know?
I didn't hear anything.
Let's give it a minute.
still have a quorum though.
Yes.
Yeah. How's everyone? It's been a while since
We age
on Zoom.
Every day.
every day.
Mm, been good.
Good.
Hard having the summer leave. Not that it feels like that right now.
All right, well, why don't we get started? We can deal with minutes. And then hopefully Jim will join by the time we move on to other items. Okay, so call the meeting to order, and Susie sent around, it's been a while now, but minutes from July 25.
Yep. So I move that we accept the minutes from our July 25th meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Where is it?
All right, seconded by Susie. Any discussion, everybody have a chance to review them? I looked them over earlier today.
Yep.
Didn't have any questions or suggestions. Anybody else?
They look fine to me.
All right, good. All right, seeing no discussion, we'll take a roll call vote.
Bob is number one now.
I know it's hard with that, but okay, so
I do
you're up.
accept, I know. Groves, aye. Groves, aye.
All right, Jim, you're muted, but I could read your lips. All right.
Well, anyway, Hemingway, aye.
Cash, you, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Fine, aye.
Oh, when I see Jim just joined.
There he is.
We're in the
Just
middle
in
of a vote to approve minutes from July 25th. Did you have any comments or suggestions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, AJ. I was not attending, so I'm not gonna, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So just to make it official, do you want to abstain?
Yeah, I'll officially abstain.
All right. Okay. So thanks, Susie. Minutes from July 25th are approved. Okay. Next up, it's that time of year. We're gonna need to send out a budget request letter and corresponding form. And I sent around a draft a while back, which not a draft, but just last year's
Mhm.
letter. I'm going to share my screen. I made a few changes or suggestions that I wanted to talk through with you guys, and then also just kind of hear everyone else's thoughts. So let's start with the letter, and then we'll look at the form together. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Should
Okay.
be a little bigger.
Yeah.
There's that.
Hi, great.
Okay, scroll it.
All right.
There you go.
So, good. So I think I'll just kind of start at the top. So obviously updated. This is fiscal year 25. Finance Committee's beginning the process of developing the budget for FY25. The look back shows that FY24 was a big year for Shutesbury. Departments and committees were able to move our town forward on many fronts. We had a whole sentence about, the prior year's kind of main, like big ticket issues that were passed at, the 22 town meeting. So I suggested replacing that with the following sentence. I'm not committed to anything. So funding for a number of capital projects was approved at annual town meeting, including a new backhoe for the highway department and several improvements at the Shutesbury Elementary School, repairs to the school roof, new security cameras, new flooring, and HVAC controls. Again, I just was kind of looking at the last year's format, and so I put that sentence in. Any questions or concerns about that, or any other suggestions on this first paragraph? Okay, April?
Yeah, just a little thing. I think it might be worth noting that we have the first new fire chief in a generation.
Yes.
I don't remember the number of years Walter
Yeah.
was there.
All right. It's hired a new fire chief.
Mm.
Or our first new fire chief in many years, or something.
Yes, that would say it.
Okay. Fire chief.
April, why is that relevant to this document?
Well, it shows one of the big changes in town. There was a lot of work done to review the job description and the function of the fire chief, and there's a funding change because we have a new chief. That's what I was thinking. I'm not wedded to the idea.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Bob?
Just want to say, I think just somewhat echoing what Jim said, I don't understand why all the red part of that first paragraph is there in the context of what the purpose of this letter is. I think it really is superfluous to what we're trying to accomplish with the letter, which is to ask people to submit their request, level funded requests
Right.
for the coming year. So I don't know. I have nothing objectionable about it. It just doesn't seem necessary to me.
And that would include that whole paragraph, basically, not just the last sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Susie?
I think it gives recognition to the departments that have something going on, and sometimes one department doesn't remember what somebody else was up to. I think it gives a sort of shows the financial commitment the town made in those specific areas, something that other departments might not be that aware of, and everybody should appreciate that those things got accomplished.
Yeah.
All right. Any So I know a couple members are not sure that it's necessarily critical, but any objections to including anything in this first paragraph? Jim, were you about to raise your hand, Jim Walton?
Yeah, I also, I just try to think what is really the purpose of this, and we really want to get people thinking about their budget process. And I'm just thinking we want to keep this document as short, as brief as possible, but get all the key points out there too.
Yeah.
So I guess those are just considerations. Keep it brief, keep the key points to what we want accomplished out of the message here to these department heads.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on, and then we may come back and just decide to do some cutting. But previous version of this letter called out COVID and inflation crisis. So just felt appropriate to update this. So I'm just saying, facing a number of financial challenges requires us all to continue to communicate and work together. So question I have for you, is that too vague? Is it important that we specify what challenges we're referring to? I'm not sure. I mean, so I don't have a strong feeling. Susie?
In tagging on to the communication and working together, that might be the part, the next sentence might be about, to that end, we are volunteering to be liaisons, to provide liaisons with each department.
Has volunteered to assign a member liaison to each department.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we should probably say something about that person's role, that that person will take on, will serve as a
Conduit.
point of, sorry, somebody said anything?
I said conduit. I thought that made a good choice of words.
Yeah.
Services.
As a conduit between your department and the finance committee.
Yeah. Will facilitate communication.
Yeah.
Then I think we start a new paragraph with "we commend departments."
I like that.
Should I just, I'm just rereading this paragraph. Should I say something like, we encourage you, let me just try this out on you guys. Encourage you to direct any questions, concerns you have about the budget to your assigned liaison or something like that? Is that necessary? Or is that kind of obvious?
I think it's too obvious.
It might be obvious. That one.
Yeah.
The other thing we're planning to do is keep them aware of the timelines. You know, because that gets a little bit lost. So we're a conduit, and keeping them abreast of the time frames.
Or maybe even just keeping them informed of our and our process.
Right.
I think further down the page, is they deal with the fact that we have a schedule, and I think that the proper place to emphasize that we have a schedule and that we need the departments to be aware of our schedule and to provide information to us on the scheduled times. Because I think it's really important for us to point out that when we develop a budget, we're developing a holistic budget, and we need to know what all the requests are before we can decide how to allocate what are, after all, limited resources.
So, Bob, this sentence here sets a specific expectation that they're going to email their budget forms by the end of October. Is that not sufficient?
I think what Susie just said, so a remark that we should include in this paper would rightly be with that paragraph about the schedule. That both of those remarks, please respond to your availability to our proposed schedule, and please be aware that we need department heads to provide all the realistic, kind of projections about what they're going to be asking for this year at that time. Do you follow me?
No.
Well, what I worry about is if somebody comes in like in a couple months after our meeting and adds a significant amount to his request or her request, that then our budget process will be out of whack because we didn't have that information when we put the whole budget together. So if you have 10 departments and you have equally divided asks for resources, and then one department goes up and you've already made a decision to provide a certain amount to another department, you don't get an opportunity to reduce the second person's. You can't adjust anything down. It's just only can go up at that stage. It'd be useful to have all the information at one time so that when we know, say, for example, that because we do have, and it's not mentioned here, but we do have a responsibility to keep the budget as low as possible because of our concern of taxpayers, interest. So we need to know what the total number is or something close so we can allocate within that limitation. Do you follow me now?
Yeah, isn't that understood by?
Well, I just want to make it
departments?
explicit because if people come later, and they do often come later, and it does frustrate me personally, I want them just to put a note in this letter that we'd like them to present their needs when we meet with them.
Right. Okay. So let's just jump down for a second. So please email your budget request forms and confirm your availability on your designated date to town by the end of October. It is essential that your
I would say the request is as accurate and comprehensive as possible, or something like that.
your request is accurate and, sorry, what did you say? And
Comprehensive.
comprehensive. Right. So
I
that
said as possible because, obviously, that's not always possible, but it's what we're aspiring for.
right, as accurate and comprehensive as possible, something like that.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So going back up.
Yeah. So going back up. All right. So here's where I think where we are right now. We commend departments for minimizing operating expenses. Annual town meeting continues to support the services provided for in the budget. We are asking you to present a level service budget for your department this year. This is our starting point.
Yeah.
So that seems like an appropriate instruction to once again give them. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that?
No, I like that. Because you're emphasizing the level service budget.
Right. Okay. Please review the financial needs required for your department to maintain the current level of services you provide. Make note of any changes, make note of changes that may cause a significant increase or decrease from your FY24 budget. Any expenses that are not included in the approved FY24 budget lines must come to the Finance Committee before they can legally be incurred. All right, Susie?
I find that putting two ideas together that are a little confusing. And I really don't know where, it's almost like please review should be in the paragraph above, and then any expenses should be in a separate paragraph. What do you think?
I see what you're
See
saying.
what that looks like.
All right, so this is what that would look like. This is our starting point. Please review the financial needs required for your department to maintain the current level. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. What do others think?
Looks good
I
to me.
like that. I like that.
Okay. Attached is the FY25 budget request form with the FY24 budget numbers filled in for your reference. We have a schedule of proposed meeting dates. Budget request form has a section to note any capital requests. Your full application for capital items must go to the capital planning committee. Okay.
So that's maybe where we should put in the time, mention the time frame.
Yeah.
And I don't know where February 6th came from, but that seems fine with me. So all capital planning requests should be submitted by February 6th.
Okay. Full application for capital item must go to.
There is a date. I don't know. I can't remember it off the top of my head, Susie, but there is a date in the mandate, on the website, the town website for the capital planning committee. And Becky,
Bylaw.
there's a date in the the founding document of the capital planning committee. I don't recall what it is off the top of my head, but it's on the
That'd be the bylaw.
website. So we could just enter that date, whatever it is.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
Let me put the 6th in for now, but we'll verify that.
Okay,
So I'm just based on that, seems appropriate to say those capital requests need to be submitted.
By February 1.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, February 1.
No later than February 1st.
Birth.
All right. Jim Hemingway?
Yes, might it not be a good, it should be a good idea maybe to ask them if they could also bring any warning that they might have some unanticipated capital spending that needs to be made. I'm just thinking of what happened this last year when all these things showed up at the last minute and we rushed around trying to find money for things. But if we asked if they have any unanticipated capital expenses that we would appreciate knowing a little bit about them in advance. I don't know, it's just an idea of, to throw that in.
So isn't that implied already?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that with what the sort of point you're making, Jim, I think this last sentence is meant to address the problem that happened last year, which is that those late requests that you're referring to came in after February 1st. So I think hopefully we're helping to avoid that problem by making it explicit that those need to be submitted by the 1st. Let me go to Susie and then Bob.
And that is on the budget form that we used last year. That was the final sentence. And, write down capital needs you're thinking about, and they must be submitted to the capital planning. And it didn't have a date on last year, so it's an improvement to put the date there too. So we'd have it in 2 places, one on the form and one in this letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking at that now, Susie. We'll share the budget form and as soon as we wrap up this letter. But yeah, it now Susie updated it to include a sentence that specifies that deadline. Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I just want to I think maybe a sentence to cover another issue, which should be clear to people that we have a limited amount of funds in our reserve. We do have we could state that we have a finance committee reserve, but it's limited, and we would like to make them aware that there's limited funds in that. So if we run out of money, we won't be able to provide funds without a special town meeting. So I don't know how to word that more elegantly than that, but I do think that information, in case some department heads don't understand, how limited our ability is to pay for things, we could make that known to them. Because we went through all our money, and we were fortunate to be able to handle it, but it's not necessarily going to be the case in the future.
Yeah.
That would,
Bob, sorry, go ahead, Susie.
That would go into this paragraph that says any expenses that are not included, blah, blah, blah. Because that's where those expenses.
Yeah, I think we could put a sentence in there, Susie. We have a limited amount of money in our reserve fund to cover extra expenses.
That sounds fine.
Yeah.
Has a limited reserve fund that can be used to pay pay for unanticipated
Yeah, unanticipated expenses, right?
expenses.
Yeah, a very limited.
Yeah, as a very limited reserve fund that can be used to pay for unanticipated expenses.
Okay.
Jim Walton?
Yeah, I guess I'd be concerned, does this send a message to the department heads that they should be maybe budgeting on the higher side to account
Yeah,
for
it's
things?
it's an interesting question. So my first thought when,
You know,
when
I'm
Bob-
just really, I'm concerned, and that's a message I think we could do when we meet with the department heads. To talk about that, I just be concerned about
Mhm.
sending a message that maybe boosts your budgets just because we're not gonna have a lot of money in the FinCom reserve.
I think you raise a good point about
Yeah.
this is something we can discuss in person.
You know, we're gonna meet with all these people. I think, I mean, I try to limit the objectives for this particular letter to the things we really want to get out of this particular the output. And I think there's maybe we come together with a list of things that we want to accomplish during our meetings with the department heads. That would include something like this.
I don't have a
Yeah,
problem.
Jim, I think it's a good point. I mean, I think this sentence does not really speak to the FY25 like budget planning process, right? It's about like, well, what happens if in FY24 you have a unanticipated expense that can't be paid for by one of your current budget lines or something. Yeah, so it is a little bit outside the scope of planning for FY25. Bob, what do you think? Are you
I'm good
persuaded
with,
by
I'm
that?
good with leaving it out. I just thought it would be something to mention, but I understand the point. And I don't mind seeing that go away.
All right, let's strike that for now. But I think the point is a good one, Jim. That we should like maybe have a list of just kind of general bullet points that we want to hit with every department head when we meet with them at their scheduled meeting. That's kind of outside of just the strict like let's review your budget. We should that's an opportunity to send kind of communicate some important sort of big picture messages. Susie?
And I think the italic sentence should also be struck because I feel it's going in the wrong direction. I think we can not do that one and have that as part of our conversation with our departments. I think most of them know that if they have to come to the FinCom, and we can do that in person rather than have something about the 24 budget stuck in this letter.
And again, that might be on Jim Walton's point, you know, one of the things that we add, you know, to our list of what we want to discuss in our meetings.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the context for this was right. We had like in FY 23, I guess it was, there was some end of year expenses. I think it was fire department expenses that we hadn't heard about until the end of the year, and then we had to like deal with that. What do others think about whether or not the wisdom of including this line in this letter? Bob?
Oh, I don't know if it's necessary to have that line, but just to revisit the issue of that problem that we had. I think that it's crystal clear that was an illegal thing for the department to do. I think everybody who runs the departments in town understand that. Maybe there's a good argument for keeping this sentence in there so that people who may not be aware I think it's a good thing now that I can think about it to include this line, because you know it's just not legal to do that, to spend over your budget without coming to us first.
But could we do that in a conversation with
Yeah,
them? Rather
that
than
sounds-
stick it in our 25 budget request form?
That sounds more supervisory.
Right. Any major concerns about striking this sentence in this letter? Again, we'll make sure that it's part of our talking points for meeting with department heads, but for the purpose of this letter, maybe we exclude it for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Let's do that. All right, this is change while I'm looking at it. Okay. All right, I think Jim Walton.
Yeah, just maybe a suggestion.
Yeah.
I think what really push, there's really two things we want the department heads to deliver on here, and that is deliver a budget by such and such a date, and deliver a capital plan by such and such a date. Should those sentences be maybe bold or something that stand out? Just a suggestion.
Yeah. What's that would look like?
Or maybe-
or maybe just bold the dates themselves. Well, let's see what it looks like for now. Susie?
I guess I'd like to go back up to that first paragraph, and I think it can be slimmed out. I think that we can make this more just about budget requests for 25. And I'd be okay about leaving stuff off of that part.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna come back to this. I think
Just take the whole.
sounds like there's some consensus that maybe we should strike this whole paragraph.
Yeah.
Any major concerns about that?
Nope, that'd be good.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
And AJ, the document ought to fit all on one page and only one page as well.
All right, so right now it is, so.
Okay.
Once again, it's been proven that editing is the best form of writing.
All
Indeed.
Yeah.
right, so I think that's basically it. I mean, obviously, we've got this paragraph, please email your budget forms by the end of October. Okay. Anything else that folks want in this letter or want to address? It's here. Does this work for everybody?
I think so.
Okay. I cannot remember if this is something we vote on. Does anybody remember that? Do we have to like approve this as a committee?
I move that we approve this draft.
And I'll second that.
Okay, great. Okay, I don't think there's any more discussion, right? Can we vote?
Bob Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Stein, I.
Walton, I.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Right, so,
Did you bold the October part?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
yeah, right down here, I just bolded a sentence.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, so I think, Becky, I can't remember if it was an email or something, but or maybe Susie told me, but I think there was a plan to both email this and deliver it to mailboxes for each of the departments. Is that what we're doing this year?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna make all those changes that are in track changes right now. I'll finalize them and I'll email you the document by tomorrow morning.
Great.
Maybe just I had a question for Becky, maybe.
Mhm.
I guess all the departments, everybody that gets this letter, some of them aren't going to have finance committee representatives, right?
Right.
And so there might be some that get this letter and say, who's my representative that really aren't going to have one? Do we need?
Mm.
You
Which
need
one
to
are you thinking of?
There's a line,
Are
there's
you-
a sentence in there that talks about your finance committee representative
Liaison.
is a source for this and that. And some of these people that are gonna get this letter aren't gonna have that representative. It might raise a question in their minds.
I guess what I'm asking is what department head or staff member is going to get this that doesn't have a liaison? Because we gave George like all those kind of
Miscellaneous.
The-
fiscal.
Well, the financial team,
Town-
Well, it's like
Yeah,
the treasurer, yeah, the
financial
treasurer,
Yeah.
the,
accountant,
Yeah, so
collector.
So we
assessor.
assigned,
What
we
about,
assigned
for
George,
example, the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board or something?
yeah, you're right, those, some of those committees,
It could be the liaison at large, AJ.
yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, I
Oh, boy.
think, so Jim, to answer you directly first, I mean, all of the sort of fiscal leaders, like the accountant and treasurer, and collector, were sort of collectively, we assigned George with backup from me as the liaison to that team. So, but I think Bob's right, there's some kind of committees that won't have a liaison, but yeah. Susie?
And historically, Becky has helped pay attention to that and answer questions. So it could be that Becky's the liaison for all others.
Right. Okay. All right, I'm pulling up the budget form itself. So thank you, Susie. Made a couple of suggested changes to the one we're looking at here. So this is a sample. It'd be the police department. We now have contact info for the liaison, in this case, April.
Yeah.
In the form, again, we started doing this, I think, last year, maybe the year before, but I think it was last year. Pre-populated with the FY24 budget amounts. I think one of the tasks for all of the liaisons this year is going to be to really emphasize the need to use this form for what gets submitted and discussed. We still have, I think, an issue where some department heads are sort of using a different form. And the problem with that is that if that form doesn't include the FY24 amounts, we end up having to do a lot of calculating in real time, looking at their last year's budget numbers and calculating what's the difference. So I think one of the things the liaisons should do is just make sure that everybody knows that it's really important to use this form to submit there. So, Becky, did you have your hand up?
Like the library won't,
Yeah.
they make their own form, but their own form goes year to year, so they always have the prior year in it. So if you didn't use it, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not concerned with that example because again, yeah, if it's presented in a clear way where we can see line by line what FY24's amount was and what the proposed value is for FY25 and what the difference is, then I'm fine. But I think we did have at least one, I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was Ryan, but we had like some budgets that didn't have the FY24 information. So yeah, your point's well taken. Susie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that Becky pointed out that somebody like Ryan, and this is about old generation, young generation, he would look at, he would see it on electronic form, and I didn't do that. So this year we hopefully address that.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I think the only other change to last year's form is this. I think Susie, right? This sentence didn't exist in last year's form.
It did. The only part that didn't have a date. So now we've reinforced the date. So I added by February 1st, 2024.
And there's a typo in submitted, Susie.
Yeah, there's a couple in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Let's put an N in there. They can mint their own. All right.
Also, officer wages up on the left column, Susie, officer.
Oh, yeah.
And holiday pay, I might want to put an H, capital H on that, I don't know.
All right.
Everything else is capitalized, so.
I'll fix it.
I've got it here too, I think. Okay.
Officer.
Did we get all the typos?
Looks like it.
Okay. All right. What about any substantive? Like suggestions or changes? Does this look good to everybody?
Looks good.
Good to me.
I need, Bob, I need what phone number you would want them to contact you with.
259-1200.
1200.
Actually, I would like my phone number changed to my
Okay.
cell phone,
Okay.
if you can do that.
Yeah. Do you want to give it to me now? Are you comfortable?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's 413-658-5625. Thanks.
AJ,
Yep.
could you put a space between community policing expenses and total police, separate that with a blank line? You just want to give them a little bit more space to write. And that sort of crowds it a little bit. It's just a simple thing, but I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. Sorry, you meant I'll add a row here, like this?
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Any other suggestions? All good here? Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
So I guess I want to entertain a motion to approve this form.
So
just to
moved.
make it official. All right.
Second.
Okay. Right,
Would
Bob, you
this,
wanna?
would this go out with the letter? These
Correct.
capital request forms would go with the letter? Okay.
Mhm.
Yep, they go out together, yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's vote to approve this. Bob,
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, I.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll send those edited versions cleaned up to Becky and Susie. Do you want me to send them to you as well? Or do you-
Yeah, yeah,
are you-
yeah.
are you
No,
gonna
I don't,
provide-
I don't need that. I'll get our letter once it's out there. And I'll
Okay.
fix the other forms for the other departments. I'll
Okay.
prepare them.
Okay, great. So you're volunteering to like pre-populate that information
Yeah,
on each. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. I don't think we need to discuss this now, but I was looking at last year's schedule, and I think so. These dates are, I think, kind of reflect what we're on track for right now in terms, not which departments get assigned, but the actual dates themselves. That
Mhm.
if we were meeting on this every 2-week schedule and starting the budget discussions with departments mid-November, that would mean starting on November 14th, and that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sort of meeting dates, potential meeting dates between November 14th and March 12th. I'm tempted to just take December 26th kind of off the schedule because I can't. It's hard to imagine we're going to actually have enough people to actually meet then. But anyway, those are the dates for
Okay.
what it's worth. I suppose as we get closer, as we get into October and we start getting the budget forms back from departments, we'll spend some time at a meeting actually making sure, hey, was the order that we met with departments last year the right order, or do we want to like swap any departments in terms of when we see them in this, or what the sequence is. Susie?
well, I was thinking about the swap. Capital planning should go last. We always end up dealing with it as last, and we tried to rush it. It didn't work. But
Yeah.
the other thing is the letter refers to us having a schedule for them. So doesn't that mean we need to do that? give them a rough schedule. We could cut tentative.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Is that what we did last year? I can't remember. Did we send them the forms, the letter, and a calendar, like a proposed calendar?
What are you saying?
Did we send?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the question is when we send the form and the letter out to each departments, do we need to include a schedule so they can see when they're slated to meet? Because our letter,
I've always included the schedule with the letter and the form. I've always included the schedule.
Right.
okay, good.
And-
Okay,
but then
so
it changes, and then you have to be careful. Then you have to make sure that everybody's notified of the changes.
The liaison can help with that too.
okay, all right. I guess I didn't remember that we included the schedule. So we should discuss we should have a tentative schedule at the end of this meeting. So Jim Hemingway?
Yes, when this information that we're requesting comes back to us, how will we find out about it? Will you be sending out copies of it before the relevant meeting, or will it be on a special folder on a website, or what? Because otherwise it's sort of the information sort of drifts around, and we may not be able to get to see it soon enough, so to speak.
Yeah, I think in a good process, which I think it could have been better last year. I would promptly post the budgets to our Google Drive, which everybody has access to. I'm not sure April does, so I'm going to make sure that she does. She's added to that. But I think there were instances where I was slow to get budget forms into that drive. So I'm open to suggestions if folks want to do it a different way. Becky.
Okay, until last year, I always received the budgets, and then I'd share them when I received them ahead of the meetings, if they were, if they didn't come in earlier. But last year, I didn't even, I don't even know if I have all the budgets for last year. I think it's a real problem for me if you start shifting, having them all go straight to you, AJ. I'd really appreciate them coming first to me, and then I'll send them all to you right away, and you can put them in the Google Drive folder, because I continue to have trouble with Google Drive, and I really need access to all the budgets so I can keep them all updated and in the folders.
Totally. I completely agree that they should be going, the letter, I mean, the form should be going directly to you. And I think our letter gives your email address. So they shouldn't be coming to me. They should be, I mean, I guess if they CC me, that's fine, but they should really be going to you. So I totally agree with that. That makes sense.
AJ, I had another issue. I'm pretty sure we had broadband in March at their request. Because I believe Gail had to get specific information before she would be able to prepare the budget.
Okay.
And the other issue, capital planning, is if we're saying it's a February 1 deadline, having capital planning on February 13th really shouldn't be a problem. Potentially.
Well,
I mean, having
wait a
it
minute, Becky.
fine, but
We need to go through a process after we receive the documents, the request. So,
well, typically we receive them all in December.
Yeah.
Okay, but we did have.
I'm just saying that you have established the deadline, and typically that wasn't typical last year. They had a late request.
Right, but if we had a request on the deadline of February 1st, 12th or 13th is a pretty quick turnaround for that committee.
Yeah, I was just saying that whatever you want to do is fine.
I would prefer to see a more of a time, a space there. But one thing I want to just ask is that I don't care if it's on Google Drive or email or on the town website or anything. I don't see why we can't have this information, that is the budget request, as soon as it's available. I mean, I must say, for me personally, to have this information delivered to me during a meeting or just before the meeting just doesn't cut it, because I don't have time to look at it, think about it, ask questions, prepare questions about it. So, we whatever the process is, Becky and AJ, we need to see this stuff, right away. I mean, within reason, as long as it's
Bob, I think what Becky said is that she wants to receive it and then she will distribute it to AJ, who will distribute it to us. I mean, I think that's what she
it's
just
great if it
said.
happens that way. That's what I'd like to see too. So
Okay.
It's always happened that way, Bob.
All right. So I see a couple of hands up, but I was just going to make a suggestion that we put capital planning down for February 27th and broadband down for March 12th. We can always double up capital planning and broadband on March 12th if it turns out we're not in a position to finalize capital requests on the 27th. But maybe as a tentative plan, we can assume that by the end of February we should be able to review the capital and meet with capital planning. Jim Hemingway and then Susie.
Yeah, I would echo Becky's comment about the difficulty she had with the Google Drive. I can remember last year, every time I wanted to go take a look at it, I had to get permission from you, I think, or whatever it was. It was just very cumbersome. It never worked, and a lot of documents were missing. So I think improving that would really help us all out.
Okay, so I mean, we could just revert back to what was done in the past, which is just strictly distribute them via email. And then, sort of like before each meeting, when folks are prepping or doing their reviews in advance of the meeting, they just got to go to their email and pull the forms down there. I'm totally fine with that. Unless there are suggestions, yeah.
Email plus Google Drive, I think, would be a good combination, because Google Drive, you always go back to it if you don't get the email, all those other problems that can occur. I mean, the Google Drive is a good idea, but just make it easier for Becky and for me and for others to access it, because it wasn't easy at all this last year.
Okay, so
both.
All right, so both. I think that's what sounds like that's what we're saying, is that there'll be an email distributing the budget forms to everybody, and then and we'll back it up in a Google Drive.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, Susie?
And I do think the liaison role will be helping this a little bit more. And that the school had a schedule last year of meetings that didn't include December, I think. And they haven't met yet this year. It's got a new chair, and but they were not ready on January 2nd, so they might actually end up closer to January 30th. And I don't really remember when the regional budget comes in, and it's kind of not mentioned here.
Well, last year was very late because of a new governor. So the budget, so everybody, the region was late because they didn't have their numbers because the governor's budget was late.
Okay.
But
do we want
the
them on
region usually comes in as a Saturday.
Okay.
And we don't know when that Saturday is going to be.
Yeah.
It's often early December. And now we don't know if we're going to have a superintendent.
Right.
So,
Well, or a financial director.
Yeah, that's, I think, the bigger issue, right? Doug is going to be the superintendent for the whole school year, but are they going to have a budget director is not clear. I don't think.
Or original school committee.
Right. Yeah. Well, that they will, right? Because there's going to be elections, but yeah. But yeah, I think. I mean, it's a side note, but I think the region is going to be a real challenge this year, because we all have been anticipating this fiscal cliff issue with no more ESSER funding available. There's going to be it's going to be a hard year, I think, for the regional budget. but we'll have to deal with it when it
Right.
comes. Okay, I guess so. Just to make sure I understand. So Susie, do you think it's a problem to leave the elementary school slotted in here on January 2nd?
I think our expectations, I'm just worried about our expectations. My guess, and I will be able to confirm this, is that actually it would be better to put them in for January 30th. But we can write it there just as long as we understand that last year they did not meet in December, and so they hadn't approved their own budget by January.
I remember, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so I think maybe another idea would be to swap the schedule for January 2nd and January 16th, and put the elementary school on the 16th and put the treasurer on the 2nd. And then again, still understanding that there'll be a possibility that we'll have to move the elementary school to this open date on the 30th.
That makes sense.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah, that makes
Bob?
sense.
Yeah, I just want to say, in the past, I don't think we did it last year, but I think we have met the school twice on several occasions because they were not able to put together a fully fledged, proposal because of missing information that they lacked. But they did kind of rough out their budget and then share that with us. And then they came back and we were able to discuss the issues that were resolved, their proposal.
Yeah.
I would not object to us meeting them twice in that sort of way this year, if that's useful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we met with them twice.
Not last year.
They did release a budget that we were able to look at, that I had notes from being at the school committee meeting, and then people raised questions and then they answered them. I'm not sure that we met twice.
Susie, my impression was that having that opportunity to look at an earlier version of the budget and like formulate some questions that you were then able to share with with Caitlin, that I felt like that, from my perspective, that worked pretty well. To have that early opportunity to sort of like get her thinking about some specific questions that we had. Did you feel like that worked? And are you willing to do it again?
So we might want to create some space in November, December. And then have the actual meeting with their approved budget in January 16th.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Any other comments about this schedule? Can we share this with, again, we know there are going to be changes to this. There are going to be many changes, of course, but at least as a starting off point, does this work for everybody?
I would put tentative in the title.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I will share this along with the forms with you, Becky. If not later tonight, I'll do it tomorrow morning. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the alternative town meeting budget format follow-up. And let me just sort of bring people, because we haven't met for a while, but up to speed, right? So there've been a couple of steps in this process, right? Paul told us at an early meeting when we were preparing for annual town meeting that, hey, I've been talking to some other town moderators who have this other process for presenting a specific kind of budget format at annual town meeting that may have some advantages in terms of allowing departments a little more flexibility for moving funds from one line to another. Susie did a bunch of legwork to find different budget formats from kind of like probably half a dozen of our neighboring municipalities. One of the formats that we saw that I think at least among some members of the committee seemed interesting was one that essentially for all the major departments had two lines, a wages line and like an operating expense line. I think that was the one that if we were to pursue this seemed like might be worth discussing. We had some conversations. Becky checked with Gail to see if it was even going to be possible, just mechanically, to have, our regular budget that we as a committee get budget reports, every couple weeks and discuss and use for our sort of function of kind of monitoring spending, but then have an alternative format that actually gets presented at town meeting and voted on at town meeting. And that's kind of, and so she said that was possible, and that I think she even had some experience. I don't know if it was with Orange, but one of the other communities that she served as an accountant for. And so it's possible, and I think we ought to discuss whether we actually want to do this now that we know that it's possible. And just to give us something to look at, here is that kind of the excerpt from Conway's budget document, which is like a weird document because it's like a huge report. But what I would focus on is what you see for departments like police, fire, where you've got essentially two lines per major department. And then, you have some historical budget amounts, proposed budget amount for that upcoming fiscal year, and a proposed change. And so, question for you guys is, are we ready to kind of have a discussion and potentially a vote about whether we want to pursue this? Is there sort of additional research that needs to be done? And if so, what is that, and who will do it? And just want to kind of, I didn't want this idea to just kind of die out there. I just wanted to see if this is something that we want to pursue. I think the only other thing I'll say is just, again, a couple points that seemed very clear in our preliminary discussions about this, is that the intention here is not to replace the accounting system that exists right now. That would not change. We would get expense reports. They would have corresponding budget amounts for all of the lines that we are used to reviewing as part of our process. This is simply kind of an alternative form for presentation and voting purposes at annual town meeting. So I think that's one important part. I think there was very clearly like consensus from all committee members that it was important that we still have the level of detail that we're used to in terms of our role of kind of monitoring the budget and spending throughout the year. So that's not going to go away. And then I think the only other point is just I think the arguments that have been articulated about why this might be a good idea or not, or I should say that in the affirmative that it is a good idea, was that it would allow department heads some more flexibility if for some reason or other they want to spend more on one of their sublines because of a particular set of issues that came up that year. And it wouldn't require them to then come to the finance committee for a FinCom transfer. It would sort of save them and us that process, and it would allow them to just move funds from one line to another. Okay, Jim, Walton.
I guess, first, I just say I like the concept. I like the idea of a couple of years of history, the budget year and the change. It's clean, it's a clean document. I guess one question I have is, how would it be populated? How would this data be populated into this format?
Right. So I think.
Sounds like Becky has a question, has an answer.
Okay. Becky? Sorry, I can't see everybody's face right now when I'm sharing your document.
Muted, Becky.
Yeah, Becky?
I would build it off the main document. I would have to build it each year. Well, once the first year is done, then maintain it with any changes that occur to the main budget.
And would that be manageable, Becky?
Yeah.
I remember George had volunteered to be helpful also in sort of making sure that this is a system that's going to be synced up so that, you know, the information presented on this short, clean form is absolutely synced up to, you know, the accounting lines that exist in our budget. April and then Bob.
I agree with Jim. I also like this idea a lot because it's a little more fluid and for the department heads to manage their own budget. And I wonder if we could look at this as, let's give this a try for a year. I mean, if it's a disaster, then we won't do it again. But I think there's something to be said with, you know, letting department heads have a little more say in how they're actually managing their budgets. And at the same time, we will continue to have oversight. I mean, it's a win-win as far as I can see.
Bob?
Yeah, I disagree with that, April, because I think what we need is as financial managers, as watchdogs, as finance committee, is to make sure there's accountability. And the reason we build a budget, and we have documents, we have our expense report that's based upon the expenses for individual departments, such as, you know, vehicle maintenance or what have you. And, you know, if something goes down, you know, it's important that that the budget reflects that. It doesn't just go into a fund for the department head to use as he or she wishes. This is really important that there's accountability about how the taxpayers' money is spent. I don't think it's a good idea to just say, yeah, you can spend it any way you see fit without coming to the finance committee and justifying it. I don't like that. I like the idea of having to apply for transfer if something special comes up. I don't have a problem with the department head coming to me and saying, you know, making an argument that this is something that should be done. And then we evaluate that argument and we respond appropriately. So I don't think that flexibility on spending large budgets is really something we want to do. We want accountability. That's more important than flexibility. Flexibility opens up the possibility of different types of abuse, you know, and I'm not accusing anybody, but I'm just saying we want to structure it so that the chances for abuse are reduced, not increased.
April?
I guess I also disagree with you, Bob, but you know, I think that that we still have the ability to monitor, and if things look like they're going haywire, we certainly have the ability to talk to a department head, plus having a liaison with, you know, between the FinCom and the departments. I think that would help facilitate this. And if it, you know, I think it's worth giving it a try because I think it could be very empowering.
Jim Walton?
Yeah, I guess I personally am not concerned about the accountability issue. I really think it's up to us and our diligence to make sure that accountability happens if there are concerns. And that can happen every time we get together when we review an updated expense report. And it is something that we see that we're not comfortable with. We have an opportunity to challenge that and dig into what are the details, and we keep on going until we are comfortable. So I guess I just don't see the issue there. And I guess I go to April's point that, yeah, to me, it's worth the trial. And the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out and we decide not to do it next year, in the next go around.
The only other point I would add is that just so I think we're all on the same page, my vision of this here is that we don't actually see this, it doesn't get created until that last phase of the preparation for annual town meeting, right? So we spend the whole year, like we do now, the whole budget season, meeting with departments, looking at the same budget forms that we are used to looking at their proposed spending line by line, where it's going to be increasing, where it's going to be decreasing. None of that changes at all. It's just we've added an additional step that probably happens sometime in April, I suspect, somewhere around then, where we have voted on a budget, right, to recommend approval of a budget. We then take that approved budget and create this simplified form for presentation and voting purposes. But it's not as if like our whole process for meeting with and reviewing budgets with departments has changed. It's exactly the same. And also in terms of monitoring spending, we're still going to see the same expense reports that we are. So for looking at the current fiscal year, for dealing with that and monitoring spending, nothing changes, right? It's just that we've added one step that happens probably around April in preparation for annual town meeting. Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say one of us is missing something, because I see a big change here that is not simply just a pro forma way to present a town meeting. It is that the department head has the quote flexibility to shift money from one account to another account without any say so of the finance committee, and to just use his own discretion to do that without any review by us. So that's a big change. That's a very big change. It's a substantial change. So whether or not we want to do it as a committee, let's recognize that it's a change. It's a substantial change in the way we do business.
That's fair. No, you're right. I guess what I meant was that we're still, in terms of the transparency aspect of this discussion, we still have access to the same information that we've always.
But the information will be that
the decision making. You're right. Yeah, I mean the whole right. If we're going to do this, the only reason to do it is to give some more flexibility to department heads. So absolutely, that's a substantive change. The question is that a good change or a bad change? You obviously have.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to make sure that we understand that point, Adrian.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, Susie.
I think that we have an example of this happening with the fire department, and him knowing that in his case he had training wages and he had call wages, and he could see how to balance them. He didn't say, I'm not going to do any more calls. He didn't say, next year I'm going to need a lot more. He just wanted to move them. So I think our examples of it are reasonable, and it really didn't need an intervention of the finance committee. The other thing about this is that I'm thinking about town meeting, and I do believe that some people feel very possessive of the process of reading everything at town meeting and believing that they have an opinion, because we know we're living in an opinionated age, on every little thing. And so I feel that it's not, I'm not looking forward to the idea that we're just trying it out. It's true, we would just be trying it out. But what I think we will see is a sense of possessiveness of town meeting for the old format. And so some people might feel the lack of details is disconcerting to them. The historical comparisons, it sounds like Becky said that, yeah, we would have to rewrite that. So we see the historical comparisons in the two categories. And so they should be a little bit satisfied about that. But I think that it could also, in the long run, serve to shorten up town meeting, which we also hear from people. So there's those that want those details and argue and hold it, and there's those that would be ready for it to be shorter. And the information could show the history, or will show the history, but I don't believe town meeting is a group of people you sort of yo-yo back and forth with. I think they take that badly.
Jim Walton?
Yeah, I think this new or modified approach or proposed approach has the potential to possibly lower even some budgets that are submitted by some of the departments. And I'll as an example, if I'm at a department head and I have 4 different accounts that I know if I go over any one of those 4, I have to go through this process, an approval process or whatever. I'm going to be more careful when I'm putting together my numbers for budget submittal and probably err on the side of higher, just so I don't have to go through that process of potentially going over budget on a bunch of items. If I have 3 accounts as opposed to 6 or 7, I don't have as much of that issue. I know I have some flexibility that I would not have if I have to deliver on 7 or 8 different items. So I say there's potential, and I'm not saying it's going to happen. I just say there's potential for potentially people being more aggressive in submitting lower budgets when they only have a fewer number of line items to commit to. The total number is the same, but fewer line items.
Okay, so I think we've had a good discussion. I'm not sure we need more time. I think people have kind of formulated opinions about whether this is a sensible thing or not. Does anybody feel like they need more time or more information before they commit to a vote on whether to move forward with this or not? Doesn't sound like it to me.
No.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion if anybody's inclined.
So what should we call this? So I move that we change the budget format from our current position, our current format to what would we call this? To our new improved,
Yeah.
different,
Streamlined or
streamlined.
Simplified or streamlined, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we should also in the motion, I think we should just make sure this is the annual town meeting.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
Not
that
we're
the FinCom will continue to receive information on each line item of each department's budget and be able to monitor closely as needed expenditures or something like that.
I second.
Great. So it's seconded by Jim. Further discussion. Jim Hemingway?
Yes, I thought the whole purpose of this was to really provide a more simplified approach, informational approach at town meeting, and that was it. You know, it was just, you know, our town residents could look it over and see what wages and expenses were for each department without trying to decipher what we have to decipher, you know, month by month when we get these reports, expense reports, which is much more complicated. And that's all I thought it was. But to convert to let what Bob said, to let this sort of fluidity in budgets to take place, I'm not in favor of that at all. I think the way we work it now is fine. This is just an informational device that we can use at town meeting, which hopefully will make town meeting run a little quicker, shorter, and will give everyone a chance to sort of get an idea of what departments are spending, not only on salaries, but also, you know, what their expenses are. And I think that's a good thing.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, it's not clear to me that the way Conway does this. I mean, we see this document before us, that this is how they present budget at town meeting. And someone came up with the idea that we should modify our presentation in a similar way, which is how we started this conversation. Then the other issue came up, which I tried to articulate about department head flexibility, as we say. And that's a different thing altogether. And I'd be interested to know how they do it in Conway, because it's not clear to me that they do it the way it's being proposed now here in this motion. I'm against that part. I'm not against the presentation at town meeting at all. I'd be happy to accept this as a way to present information to the voters at town meeting. What I am not in favor of is the other part, which should be a separate motion, I think, to my way of thinking. And it's not really related in any way to this, to my way of thinking. So I'm very much against that, again, for reasons I've tried to articulate. But again, we don't know if Conway does it that way. We don't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say in response, Bob, is that I think I think it was pretty clear from that Paul's reason for raising this with us was because of the flexibility point and giving department heads greater flexibility to kind of spend their allocated funds in different ways in response to unanticipated issues. Like that was at least the way this concept was presented to us originally. Rationale was that was, more flexibility was a good thing. And so whether he was referring to Conway or some other town, I'm not sure, but yeah.
Bob, once town meeting votes this format, it creates the flexibility. It's because it's the town meeting vote, they've only limited it to one expense line for every department. So all the expense lines that we might have on our working expense sheet or the budget are condensed into that. And that vote on that one line item is what creates the flexibility. That's helpful.
In that case, I'm against this twice.
Okay. Just so you know what it is.
Yeah. All right. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I need the motion. So I'll tell you what I drafted or thought I got.
Okay.
Move to change the budget format to simplified format for annual town meeting. Continue to receive financial information in the current form. So I guess we should be clear and say, move to change the budget format to simplified format for ATM vote. And then we need to make it clear that that's what they voted. I mean, they vote 2 lines. I don't know how you want to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I took Becky's point to indicate that, if this becomes the budget that's presented and that's associated with a warrant article that's voted on at town meeting, then that is what it is, right? I mean, that's it's been approved.
But I think what we're saying is that the FinCom reserves the right, while consulting with department heads or looking at the budget, to really be able to get the finer details as it flows. And
so maybe the second part of that motion could say something along the lines of the finance committee will continue to receive detailed expense reports from departments for the purpose of monitoring spending.
Right. And support.
Susie, is that clear enough for?
Well, I just want to read it.
Yeah, please. I think it's a good idea.
Move to change the budget format. No, move to change the budget format to simplified format for the ATM vote. Continue to the FinCom will continue to receive detailed financial reports from departments to continue monitoring them. Monitoring expenses, I guess. Expenses. Is that what we're voting on?
Yeah, but and is there a way to just note that there is fluidity within those lines that we're offering department heads?
Well, maybe we should say that it moved to change the budget format to a simplified wages and operating line.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
That's good. That's good.
Merely for informational purposes,
Yes.
for town meeting. I
But no,
suppose,
But Jim, it's not just informational purposes. Like this is going
Well-
to be, this would be the budget that gets approved at town meeting by voters and would be what department heads are going to be held accountable to, right? So it's not just a matter, I mean, to your point, I think in Bob's point, it's not just a matter of presentation of information. It's a substantive change in the process, because this is what departments heads are going to be accountable for, not the kind of
I understand, but I'm not, I think that fluidity, that seems to be the word of the day here, this is a big change, and I'm wondering, I'm not too thrilled at this point.
Guess we're ready for a vote, though.
Bob?
I'll just say one last thing. I think that if we vote this in, it's an irresponsible act by this committee. And it's a way to ignore our responsibility as watchdogs, as people that monitor and oversee budgets. We lose the specificity, we lose control, we grant it to the town employees. It's not a good institutional method. I've seen a lot of things. I read the paper every day. I've seen a lot of towns where public officials have misbehaved, abused their power, have had worked in the dark. I'm not saying that's true of anybody that works for us today, but this is a big change. It's a substantial change, and it's reckless and irresponsible. So I'm against it. Groves, nay.
I understand. I just want to make one final discussion point, which is that I want to make sure that it's clear to all of us that this is not a matter of more or less transparency, right? The process is going to be as transparent as it's always been.
Yes.
We're going to have access to the same information that we always have. But absolutely true that we will be providing, the process will provide some more flexibility for department heads. But in terms of things happening in the dark, I don't see this as an issue that has any implications for sort of kind of transparent management of kind of department budgets. Okay, I think we are ready for a vote. So why don't you kick us off, Bob?
Groves, nay.
Hemingway, nay.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, I.
Okay, so motion passes 4-2. That was a good discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
So the good news is we have some time to work out the details. This is, this is gonna require obviously some work. But we've taken kind of the first step, and we, as we get closer to annual town meeting in 2024, we're gonna have to work out the process of how this alternative form gets populated.
That's
Can I ask a question? Maybe Becky would be the person to answer it, but
Sure.
it's kind of changing the way that we account and we do a business. Isn't this something that should go through some deliberative process? Shouldn't there be a bylaw or some other way to create this administrative change? Is it just an administrative change that the finance committee can work out on their own? Is that how it works, you think?
Called
Yeah.
a budget. That's our
Yeah.
job, is to make a budget. And it doesn't say to what level of detail in the in our charge. It just says to create the budget.
I really do wish that we had done more research on this before this. I think, with the Mass Municipal Association, the Finance Committees, national state organization, and see what other towns do, and see what problems may or may not exist under this kind of system. But hey, we had our vote.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, Bob, I thought I asked the question a couple of times about whether people felt like they needed more time to do research. It didn't sound at the time that anybody spoke up, so that's why I proceeded. But I hear your, I mean, I understand your concerns.
Mhm.
I think you were very clear about that. Okay. Let's see. Next on the agenda was Highway Superintendent Hiring Committee. Is there are there any updates, Becky, on the formation of that committee? Has it met, and
Mhm.
is there a plan for? Yeah.
The committee met last Thursday night. The second meeting will be tomorrow night, this coming Wednesday. And at that point, we're gonna be reviewing resumes, and after that, establishing time for interviews.
Got it. And do we have FinCom representation in that?
Bob, you recommended Bob?
Yeah.
Remember,
Okay,
AJ,
good.
you sent an
Yeah.
email with Bob's name on it. Or
Yeah.
Bob sent an
Okay.
email and then you forwarded that, I think, to me.
Okay, great.
And April
And
Stein
Bob,
is the personnel board representative.
Okay, great. Okay, good. All right. I just wanted to make sure that we were represented. So it sounds like that's
Yeah,
going.
but I'll be there in person, so yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. That would be good. Yeah, we don't want to have to, all of us plow the roads ourselves.
It wasn't clear that I'm just so used to meeting this way that,
I know, yeah, it would be nice to all be in the room together.
I tried to make it clear we were having an in-person meeting with Zoom possibilities, a hybrid meeting. So we held a hybrid meeting and everybody was there but Bob. And I was like, oh my God.
right through one ear, in one ear, not the other, Becky.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's okay. It'd be good to see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next on the agenda is that we have sort of a placeholder item for project updates, and I don't know if there is anything that you wanted to update us on the school roof, the culvert. Are there any kind of any important updates to share with the committee on any of those projects?
I have a couple. The school roof, as we're having a meeting tomorrow morning to go, I think it wasn't confirmed yet. So potentially tomorrow morning, we'll be going through the punch list on the school roof. And if not this week, hopefully next week. I think everything was done last time I was there, except for the connection of the downspouts to the gutters.
Wow.
So that is very near completion, and we were able to open school with only with our crew only coming back Saturdays to finish a couple of things. So given this year of rain, that was a miracle.
Yeah.
The second issue,
Yeah.
and I need to knock on wood before I talk about our so dramatic culvert. So the culvert crew was back at the dam site this morning awaiting their excavator. We now have a 48-inch pipe for the bypass system, the water control system, and that should be installed this week.
Oh my God.
Becky, did
It's a miracle.
I looked at the amount of pipe that they have. Is all the pipe that is needed there or not? Because I couldn't tell from the way it was stacked up. It didn't look like it was as long as was needed, but I wasn't sure about that. Did they say anything about that?
I believe they need about 200 feet. Yes,
No.
it's all there. I think, I'm not sure where you were looking, and it's a single pipe, the last.
Yeah, I know it's a single pipe, but there's no 200 feet of it there.
Oh, yes, there are. I'm pretty damn sure I parked near it the last few weeks. So, last week or so. They're in good shape.
That's great.
20, that would be 10 sections of pipes. I didn't see 10, but I was just driving by. It didn't look like there was
I saw more than 10.
Okay.
Susie?
I was wondering if there's a market for a very little used first bypass pipe, like maybe.
The first bypass pipe was restocked. We had to
Oh,
pay a
great.
restocking fee, but we got
Great,
We did,
we
we
got
did get,
some money back.
great.
we did get money back for that. I was wondering about that.
Not the full amount, but we got some money back for restocking.
Mhm.
That's great.
Great, good job.
It's just the 48-inch pipe is quite a bit more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
This is good news.
So they're gonna
Um,
start digging this week, right? To put it in?
Well, yes, to start, they've got to put the water control system in first.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandbags and the rest of it.
Yep.
And
And they
there's no,
put those huge, like 5 by 5 foot sandbags they're the white bags that are like lining the roadway.
Mhm.
They're gigantic.
well, I have to say, we will miss the extra traffic on Montague Road when this is complete, but
Yeah, sure.
we'll live with
Well,
that.
Well, ask the people on Wendell Road about it.
Yeah, Wendell
Oh,
Road.
that's even
It's-
worse.
It's much worse. Yeah, I have to
Might-
make that drive all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to close down your lemonade stand.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be filled with dust and dirt that's getting swished around when people.
So Jim,
people
there's
drive.
a lot of outside restaurants down there at the end of Locks Pond Road now, cafes, seating and stuff.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
All over the roadway. We're gonna have to charge meals tax in Shutesbury.
For sure.
All right.
Oh, and I saw
Project
trout
updates,
today
let's
in the
go.
stream. Let's hope they survive it. Sorry.
No problem. Thanks for those updates. Are there any other project
How about
updates?
PFAS, Becky?
PFAS is working on getting grant money at this point. So that it's not been as active. I still have one more poet to install for the the carbon filter. But we're in mid-range. We're gonna have a bunch of reporting coming up the end of the year, but it's a little bit quieter at the moment, just working on more grant funding or grant loans.
Great.
You.
All right. So I have a question for you guys. We got an expense report, I think at the end of August. I don't know, have folks had a chance to look at that? And do we want to take a few minutes to discuss it? Or would folks like some more time, we can add it to the next agenda. It's always a little hard. These like
There's
first
funky
couple of-
stuff in that that's not 100% yet. You're gonna have more questions about funny things than real
Okay.
things, I'm afraid.
All right, so maybe it's not worth taking time right now. But maybe at our next meeting, we'll have an updated expense report to look at. Okay, any other business committee updates? Any topics, comments folks want to discuss before we wrap up tonight? Susie?
The school committee had a change in membership, and I haven't heard from them their schedule of meetings. So they haven't had the first one. I did talk to Anna Hurd, who is on the school committee and is the rep to the region. She asked me to talk to her a little bit about the history of the assessment agreement. And what I told her is that, you know, as much as it took a lot to get it there, it's still a piece of paper. And, you know, I encouraged her to think about having, wanting some continuity with the administration, and that now that the administration is kind of open to change, we would need to keep on top of the assessment agreement, because if it feels open, then I can imagine some of the council members in Amherst would want it to be re-examined. So I'm glad that it's Doug Slaughter. He's from the district. He does know about it, but I just kind of feel like somehow we should not only cross our fingers that the assessment agreement stands, but that we be prepared to continue to say that that's the agreement. And I don't know, I can't remember what the final part was in terms of whether it had to get rewritten and re-signed. I think Becky told us something that it wouldn't need to be rewritten.
The regional agreement itself, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Susie, I think my recollection of the last 4 town meeting was that Doug Slaughter and possibly Sean and Mike all said that we have an established method now that we're going to use going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I just
So I
seen
think that
papers
was-
in the history that don't always support that.
I know.
I think it, but Susie, you might, I have to look at the agreement again because it defaults to statutory. If you don't, I mean, if it,
Right.
so if it defaults to statutory, I'm not helpful right
An
now.
And it
alternative
has
method.
to have the
has to be-
5-year rolling average written into it, because that's not what statutory says. And I just thought that somehow we were
Right, Susie.
originally holding our breath about whether we'd have a committee meet and make that in a formal agreement. And anyways, it just feels more vulnerable to me right now, and that we should understand what our role is and advocate for an agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the agreement is not what is written in the regional agreement right now.
Right.
Mm.
But we've
Yeah,
been,
I think your point's really well taken, Susie. I think there's going to be there's going to be additional context here, which is that there's going to be pressure on the budget itself, the numbers. I think we're facing right now like
Yeah.
a gap of about it's going to be like $1.5 million with, by just removing the COVID related funds that the region has relied on the last couple of years. And so the combination of, pressure on the budget, lots of new personalities in leadership positions. And I think it's fair to say that Mike was played a really important role in sort of like keeping the momentum moving in this direction. And I think, he was the one that came up with this whole guardrails concept, which I guess him and Doug, which was ultimately, I think, kind of what needed to happen in order to convince the other towns to move forward with modified statutory. So we kind of, I think there are some new vulnerabilities, and we shouldn't take for granted that it's just going to, that we're not going to have to continue to fight this fight and kind of put pressure to. So I think that's an important point that you raised. I think I would like to, at an appropriate time, I think I would like to just schedule a meeting with Doug Slaughter just to make sure that he hears our concern about wanting to make sure that that this is going to be kind of the starting point in terms of assessment method for this next year. If you all think it's appropriate, I might try to do that.
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
yeah,
The
there's a lot at
elections,
stake.
the elections in Amherst are both for the school committee and the town council. There's a temporary appointment going to go on, but the election is in November, and the school committee new members will take place in January. So
I see.
anywhere in there, our words would be good.
Okay. Jim Walton?
Yeah, maybe I missed with the last meeting, but replacements for Dan and Steve for Shutesbury?
Yeah, so
Who
Anna
knows?
Hurd and Jeremy Mayu were elected.
Okay, thank you.
And Anna's serving as our representative on the regional school committee.
As well.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Welcome aboard.
Is our
Yes.
next meeting the 19th of September? Is that it?
Sounds right.
Sorry, Bob, you kind of broke up there. Were you asking about our next meeting or?
Our next meeting, yes.
Yeah, so let's plan on meeting on the 19th then, 2 weeks.
At what time?
6:30.
6:30?
6:30.
That works.
Okay, back to tradition.
Yeah.
Love tradition.
And maybe we should be wondering what to put on that agenda. I don't have anything in my minutes that reflected something. Oh, review the expense report. That's what I have.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll just be like a basic update on distribution of budget forms and letters, but we won't get anything back by.
So Becky, are we likely to have a final numbers for 24 in that time? Or is
No.
no, not then. Okay.
No way.
And the process for certifying free cash, we got all the players in place. We got, yeah. Mhm.
We won't know about
There
that
he
until
is.
what, November, right?
Yeah,
The
that would be
cash?
the earliest.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if we had all the staff for that.
Yeah.
So should we dissolve the meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, Bob,
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashy, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, I.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Very nice.
AJ.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, AJ.
All right.
Take care.
You too.
You have a good evening.
Good night.
We're gonna have lunch, Becky? Thursday?
I gotta look at the calendar. The Thursday's a little crazy. I'll
Okay.
call you.
I can also do it Friday. We have now an option. Of
All
course,
right.
that would have to be a beer somewhere. Not only two.
Yeah. I probably can't do that.
Okay, let me know Thursday or Friday.
Will do. Bye.
Okay, thanks.